Hey everybody, it's Judy and welcome to Thursday's Facebook Live in the More Than Enough Women's Circle. And today's topic is going to be all about emotional availability. And I don't know about you, but I've always thought that that was kind of like a fuzzy gray area that, couldn't really put my hands around. But with emotional intelligence and learning about that for so many years, I really got some really great information that I'm going to share with you today that I'm really, really excited about. And I also just want to let you know that we do have some new offerings that are going to be coming out, and I wish I could give you more details on those too, but just hang tight and it'll be just another couple of weeks or so. And that's my dog in the background. She's getting in the groove for the Facebook Live. Okay, so if there is I see people are coming on. That's great. And if you could just let me know that you can hear me. I do want to pause a minute just to give people a chance to hop on. I know I sent some reminders today to let you know what time we were starting, and just want to give people a chance. And in the meantime, want to let you know that we are actually going to be having a Facebook Live again next Thursday. I really missed you guys last week. I was training a workshop, so I couldn't be here live. It's kind of hard for me to be in front of a room full of leaders and doing this as well, but maybe one day I'll be able to figure that out. Anyway, let's jump right in. We're going to be talking about emotional availability. And specifically, I'm going to help you understand a definition of what emotional availability is. So at least we have like a level understanding of what emotional availability is. Then we're going to talk about, what are some of the reasons why this is important to you and why you need to actually to learn about emotional availability, because it does help you in your business as well as your life. And I see Robin Sloan is here. Hi, Robin. How are you? Great to see you here. Oh, great. You can hear me. Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much. So, like I said, I want to talk about the 4 key components. I want to talk about what does this mean? What does it mean to you and your business, as well as the components. And when I go through each one of those components, I'm also going to give you the main takeaways and the key learnings that I have, the key distinctions for each one of these components. So it's really going to be helpful to you. All right, so let's dive right in. Oh, and I see Melinda Armstrong is here too. Hi, Melinda, how are you? Let me see if I can see your comment. Let's see. For some reason, I can't see your comment, Melinda. I'm sorry, I can't see it. Anyway, so I want to get started. So the definition that we're going to work with in terms of emotional availability is it refers to an individual's emotional responsiveness. And there's a range. And the range starts at supportive and it goes down to self-focused. So as you'll notice in that range, and there is a midpoint that talks about the attitude of the person, but when we talk about the supportive end of the range of emotional availability, it's how much you can be present with someone. So if you think about being supportive is also being present and being there and listening, that would be on the positive end. And on the other end of the spectrum is being self-focused. Like it's all about me. I'm not really paying attention to you. I'm not really present, that kind of a thing. Now, what's interesting about the attitude, because there's an underlying attitude that comes with emotional availability. And one of the aspects that you need to be aware of is whether or not you're in acceptance or in rejection. Because there are a lot of people, and I would even say rejecting is being defensive. So if you're in a defensive attitude or posture, that actually diminishes your emotional availability, right? And you can think about it, for example, if you're in an argument with somebody and you get really defensive, that puts you in that place of being more on the self-focused side of the spectrum, and it's probably not going to help you be able to be emotionally available to the person that you're dealing with. Okay, so let's dive into, I have some notes here. Let me just look down here for a second. So to give you a sense in terms of what this means and as a real-time example, I do a lot of 360 assessments with my clients, right? And 360 assessments are the opportunity where someone is given feedback from their boss, from their peers, as well as the people that work for them, right? Their direct reports. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about a 360 report. So I was going, when I look at these two examples that I'm going to give you, they're definitely extremes. So I want you to know that too. So for instance, I'll give you Bella. Bella got her 360 back, and some of the feedback that she got around emotional availability was that she's not approachable, she's aloof. It's like now you see her, now you don't. There's the silent treatment whenever she's in a conflict. So it kind of brings it to life in terms of her emotional availability was really low. So now let me give you an example of somebody that had a really high emotional availability, which was Tammy. And the comments that Tammy got was, she knows how to read the room, she really gets me, she listens, I'm glad I'm on her team because I always know where I stand. So those were some of the comments that Tammy got in terms of her emotional intelligence. So you can see the difference in terms of how people were rating them and observing them in terms of behaviors. And again, it's really important for you to understand what I'm going to be talking about today is about behaviors, because I think that's the most helpful information that we can talk about, because we can talk about concepts all day long, but if you don't know what the behaviors look like, it's really hard to put your hands around it. Okay. Oh, hi, Melinda. I see what you're saying. You just got here. Hello. Okay. So we're talking about the 4 components. But before I do, I also want to tell you about why this is important to you as a businesswoman, right? You're a businesswoman, you are really successful, and you want to be even more successful, and you want to up-level your game. And the things that are really important is having relationships as well as making, having a bottom line, right? Those are two key things, whether you're in the corporate world or if you have your own business, those are 2 key things. And I always love to go back to the main theme of connection is currency. So write that down. Connection is currency, and it means currency in 2 ways. It's relationships as well as the bottom line. So when we talk about connection as is currency in terms of relationships, it's how well you're connecting with your clients, with the people that are working for you. Are you building a high-performing team? That translates, though, into the bottom line, because the second part is the money part, right? You will end up making more money, having more clients, developing more business, having better relationships within your company, etc. if you have this connection, this emotional availability. That's why you need it. So these are the 2 key reasons why you need emotional availability. It helps your relationships, your professional relationships, as well as your bottom line. So think about it in these terms as I'm walking through the rest of the content, okay? All right, so the 4 key components. Okay, let me see if I can get this right. I'm going to put this up. Okay, so there you go. Hopefully you can focus on that. So the 4 components are sensitivity, structuring, non-intrusiveness, and non-hostility. Okay, I'll put that up again later. So when we talk about those 4 components, like sensitivity, just to give you a sense of what that specifically is, there's actually more behaviors under that again, are putting more meat on the bones in terms of what do we mean by sensitivity. So sensitivity is marked as whether or not you're balanced and genuine, okay? Whether or not you have awareness of signals, whether you can read the room, whether you can read other people or not, right? Awareness to timing. And I thought this was really interesting, because when you talk about emotional availability, is the timing right to approach someone? Is the timing right to engage them or to have an emotional available kind of conversation, right? Knowing timing is also a really important part of sensitivity. Flexibility, variety. Okay, so these 2 things, when you talk about, in terms of your flexibility, are you rigid or are you flexible? Do you go with the flow, or does it always have to be your way? So when you think about emotional availability, even in the emotions that you're able to receive or to hear, right? Are you able to hear the good behaviors and emotions, as well as maybe some of the challenging ones? And here's what's interesting too. I think it's interesting is that we as humans label emotions good and bad when actually their emotions are just energy in motion, emotion, energy in motion. If you think about that as kind of like an equation, like E plus motion, right? So it's really energy in motion, but are you labeling the emotions bad or good? And are you making it, are you rigid around them, or are you flexible around the ones that you can handle energetically? Okay. The next one is acceptance. Are you able to speak respectfully to people, or is there a sense of disrespect? So this is an important thing to think about, like when you're looking at how other people are behaving around you, right? Because part of what I'm describing today is a self-assessment, right? You're probably thinking to yourself, am I this way? But also there's an opportunity for you to jot down these sub traits to be able to think about what are the traits of other people that I'm dealing with. Okay. So the next one is the amount of interaction. And that is basically just like when you're having emotional availability with someone, are you giving it enough time? Have you had enough data points? Have you had enough times of connecting with that person to build emotional availability? Because you don't want to jump right into it, right? It's not like you want to meet somebody for the first time and you're just, being completely transparent and vulnerable. You have to ease into it, especially in the professional realm. And the last piece under sensitivity is conflict situations. And here the key distinction is, can you resolve conflicts as well as embrace them and have those difficult conversations? Or is it something you really resist? And do you end up leaving disagreements or conflicts unresolved? Do they constantly come back and back and back and back again? Because generally, most of our conflicts, and this is something that I know from experience as well as from teaching conflict types of workshops, most conflicts are about the how we do something. I think that how I do it is right, and you think how you do it is right. So if we are tied to that emotionally about how we do something, if we're emotionally tied to it, are you able to have that kind of a conversation where you can unpack that with someone and come to some kind of resolution? And sometimes the bottom line is you can come to agree to disagree, but you can also come to a place of awareness and compassion. So that's what we're talking about there when we're talking about emotional availability. So some key takeaways, 2 key takeaways from sensitivity as the key component. Number 1, be consistent. The more consistent you are in terms of your sensitivity, the better off you are. Why? Because people like to be able to know what's coming at them. If you're the type of person that you don't know from one day to another whether or not that person is going to be emotionally available, you kind of have a hard time trusting, and you have a hard time not feeling like you have to walk on eggshells, right? So the second one is resolve conflicts. Take the time to do it. And if it's a skill that you need to develop, definitely invest the time into it. I will definitely be talking about resolving conflicts in the coming weeks and months ahead. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, just put that on your radar of some, being able to resolve conflicts is really, really important in terms of the sensitivity of emotional availability. Okay. So I'm going to pause right here and see if there are any questions so far, just on the first component, because it's a really beefy one, right? It has a lot of key components. It has sub-traits into the key components. So I just want to see if there's any questions. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to continue on. And I know there's a delay sometimes, so let me just keep moving on here. So the second key component of emotional availability is structuring. So what structuring means is, bottom line, boundaries, right? Are you able to set and keep clear boundaries with yourself and others? So emotional availability comes from within. So if you think about how much emotional availability you have to yourself, do you have compassion and patience for yourself? This is a big one that I've worked on for a really long time, but I definitely see a lot of clients that are people pleasers. And when you're a people pleaser, there are times that your boundaries are so, I'm going to call it wishy-washy, that it doesn't benefit you. And people have this misconception that, people pleasing is a good quality. I mean, you do want to please other people, but in leadership, in business, in any relationship, if you have a skill or a behavior that you are overusing, it becomes a liability. So if you're pleasing others and you like to please others and you like to be giving, great. But if you're overdoing it, it becomes a liability. So when it comes to structuring and in terms of emotional availability, you can think about how you can be over emotional to someone, right? You can somehow be, how do I say, dumping your emotions on in a relationship that's really not ready for it. And I'll give you a key example. I was just talking to someone the other day about this, and it was about being able to talk to people at work about how she was feeling about a particular change that was just announced. So she's in this work environment, and she used to have a really close friend that she could vent to, but in the environment, her friend had actually taken another position in a completely different company, so she didn't really have access to her. So if you think about it, being able to vent within a job environment, it takes a lot of sensitivity. You have to think about who your audience is. How sacred is that space? How much do you trust that person? So when you think about structure and setting boundaries, have those boundaries for yourself so that you're not over venting, and also create a safe space for others to vent to you, right? Create that safe space and honor the safe space. If you are allowing someone and someone asks for permission to come and vent to you, it has to stay in the room and it has to be sacred. I just want to repeat that a few times. It's so important in terms of structure, because if you don't, it totally breaks down that trust. The other thing is walking your talk. That's another part of structuring. Do you walk your talk? When you set a boundary, do you keep it? So do you keep confidence when someone shares or someone is venting to you, right? You have to be able to have that ethical behavior, that structure within emotional availability. How many of you have had someone can really keep a safe space and a sacred space for you to just feel so safe to be able to be who you are and to share exactly, that vulnerability that you have, right? That's a very special relationship. In the business world, you have to pick and choose those relationships very carefully. The other thing that I would say is that vulnerability is also really powerful. If you haven't read the book yet by Brene Brown, I love Brene. I'm like one of her biggest fans. Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly, talks about vulnerability being a superpower. And I really agree with her, because when you do speak your truth and you're authentic, that's definitely a superpower, because most people know that that's how you can also connect with people. However, if you're doing it too soon and you don't have a safe space or you don't have a context in which you can do that, I would really think twice. Okay, so be really mindful about that. So key takeaways here is don't be a people pleaser, because you can actually end up losing trust as opposed to gaining trust. Make sure that you have a safe space if you're going to vent. And when it comes to being vulnerable, with clients or business associates, make sure that there's enough investments in the bank account of the relationship in order to do that, and walk